In this video, I'm going to show you why choosing the right font is so important, because picking the wrong font actively works against your brand messaging. So my name's Ty, I'm a graphic designer. I've been working with typography for the past 6 years now, which is crazy. But in this video, I'll go through 3 examples where I'm going to pick the right typeface so that I can visualize the brand voice and affect the reader's feeling towards my brand in the way that I want them to feel. So branding is all about consistent messaging, and your font choice leaves a message about how the world should feel about you. So with that being said, we're recording this live. This is unedited, so I hope you'll work with me here on that. And I have three examples that I'm going to go through here. So we have a coaching business. We have a software as a service business. This is like a website for a SaaS business. And then this is going to be a TV show, with a lot of personality for a specific sports show. So we'll go through these, starting with the coaching. So I have thrown together a logo here, and I am not pretending like this is a good logo. I threw it together in 3 minutes for the purpose of this video. But even with the horrible logo, this typeface does not match the logo. No, it definitely does not. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to go about picking the right typeface for this coaching company, coaching business. So here's the thing about a coaching business is you want your customers and your prospects to trust you. And so I'm going to be piggybacking a little bit off of my previous video where I talked about different types of fonts, and in there I discussed how serif fonts are good for expressing ideas that are timeless, traditional, or if you want to appear trustworthy, which is why banks and law firms and universities use serif fonts. So since I want to go with this idea of trustworthy, and I want to convey trust in my visuals, in my packaging, in my messaging, and the way that I'm perceived, I'm going to select a different typeface because a sans serif font like this just doesn't work. So my process for this is to literally go through my font list here. I'm going to shrink this down, and I'm going to make a big list, and I'm going to pick out all of these serif fonts that I think would work for my project here. So I have a ton of fonts here, and even still I know people with like way more, and I'm just gonna make a giant list of a bunch of different fonts that I have, scrolling through here like this. And this is literally the process. It's not glamorous, it's not fun, but this is legitimately how it's done. And it's kind of the best way to find these fonts, is just to line them up like this until you find something. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do this. Okay, so I had to make an edit just because I don't think you wanted to sit there and watch me select all of these fonts. But we have a ton of options now, and so I think it's a matter of figuring out, what do we want to do? How do we want to be seen, and what message do we want to convey? So looking at all of these typefaces, I'm just going to point out a couple of observations and things that I like. So I like this one because to me it kind of speaks of like being rough around the edges, but being raw and real and showing you how it's actually done. So I kind of like that as an option. And there's another one down here that I really noticed. So this one looks a little bit more, I would say, elegant, a little bit more delicate. And to me, this speaks to a little bit of a higher end of the market. So this would be a much nicer experience. Contrasting to this one, where this seems more DIY, this one seems more refined and more of an experience. And just looking through these, this one to me just looks traditional and trustworthy. So I'm just gonna, let's see, keep scrolling through these, and I'm gonna decide on one here. That one's a classic. I like this one. This one is traditional yet seemingly modern at the same time. Like the shapes are slightly different. We have a different serif, like on the C here, how it kind of curves in and gets thick. And it's pretty interesting. So for this, honestly, I like this one the most. I feel like this works best for my brand that I want to pick. So I'll take this and we'll go there. And now if I did go with this style, what I would do is I would take this and try to do something to also match the logo to this sketchy looking style, because this looks like a sketched thing. I do the same thing with the logo. Okay, I made another edit. I tried to make it work, but you kind of get the point. This is a terrible logo, but I would then try to make this look all sketchy and roughed up like that. So now looking at this, it gives you a certain sense of the voice of this business, as well as you as a reader, you interpret this a certain way. So I would look at this and I would say, okay, Susan's coaching. It looks like it's going to be a little DIY. It looks like it's going to be a little bit rougher on the edges, but that's going to be part of the fun. And obviously it's a coaching business, and so I'm going to learn something from it. And the book in the logo says that as well. So that is an example of coaching and the process that we go through. And it's going to be a similar thing here for a SaaS website, except I can almost shortcut it and just say some solid ones are Montserrat. I'm going to shrink this down just for examples, and we need to set this to like regular. This one we can set to enter is a solid one. Regular, like that. And one more that I like that is a little bit off the beaten path a little bit is, we'll say Osaka. So this one is also very simple, very standard, and it works. So my favorite of the bunch is Montserrat. So let's just stick with that. And we got this on our modern software as a service website. All of these like modern websites have this weird glowy ball thing, so I just decided to roll with it for this thing. So yeah. What I would do is I would increase this, bold it, because here's the thing about typography as well, is it's more than just the font choice, it's kind of how it's decorated. So with a software as a service, a lot of times they're using gradients. So maybe we would do something like this, pull this down, because gradients like this add a little bit more depth to it and make it pop. So we could do something like that, although I feel we should add in a bit of this color down here and then bring it back to white, like so. Something like this works just fine. A lot of times too, what they do, if I set this to just a plain color, I can come into the effects, and since I'm in a design phase, this isn't an actual website builder, I can add a shadow underneath it, fully opaque. And now it gives it a very slight 3D look to it. Very, very, very subtle. But it fits more for like a more modern website. Okay, finally we're down here, and this is something that I actually recently did. So I'm speaking from experience here, but this is for the third example, we're going to use a display font. Now, this is for a sports show, you could say, like a sports podcast, which means that you have to pick the right font. Now, I could go for something kind of crazy like this. This would make it feel super fun and vibrant and friendly, but it doesn't quite fit like the sports field. Something like that doesn't look too bad. And I have a couple of these display fonts. Display fonts are more unique, they're more different, and they're non-standard, you could say. They're non-standard and kind of like the serif and the sans serif. There's kind of a basic traditional look to them. Display fonts kind of throw that out the window in favor of art and personality and uniqueness, which is the great thing about these types of fonts. Cool. Here's a bunch of display fonts on here. And by the way, if you want to look for fonts or find good fonts, they're all over the place. You can find them for free all over the place. Google Fonts is actually a really good resource. I'll link in the description a video I made about some free resources where you can find fonts. But we're thinking sports. If I have sports in mind, which one of these stand out the most? Well, to me, this one does. This one does. I'm going to move them down here. What else do we got? What else do we got? I mean, this one, obviously, and this one. Maybe even that one a little bit, but I don't think so. Okay, so now it's a process of elimination. So these ones don't work, but these ones do. So which one do I like? Well, this is a more of a football vibe. All right, it's a field goal. Field goals are in American football, so maybe this one wouldn't work, which means it's a choice between these three. Now, what I might do at this point is I need to compare them at full size and maybe even full color. So if the color for the show is like a dark green, we'll just say it's this green. We'll set that up and we'll scale these up so I can really see what we've got here. This one I know doesn't work, so now we can just check it out and compare and continue to process it down. So I'm going to go here, get rid of that, and here it is. Honestly, making a video like this is interesting because the process is it's very simple, but there's a lot of thought put into it, and you can't just pick a random font and call it good. Because even with this one, I might want to look for similar fonts and choose and compare other options. So I'm shortcutting a lot of the process for the sake of a video. But anyways, let's continue. Now this is for a sports show. One thing I'm going to do to this, because I want this to, because with sports there's a lot of movement, it's action. I want to make this typography feel like there's a little bit of movement to it. So what I'm going to do is skew it just a little bit, probably about 10 degrees or so, just like that. And that is now a pretty decent choice of font for a show. Now, because this is a display font, I'm not going to use it all over the place. What I might use this for is headlines, for thumbnails, for name tags. So if I've got the host name, right, I'd create like a lower thirds graphic with this, right? Or if this is a podcast, I could put this as the podcaster's name, something like that, and that would work. It's a display font. This is a more readable display font, but then underneath it, I still need to choose a font for like body copy, because I can't write out a whole block of text with this type of a font. Like, let's try and do that. Let's insert a block here and let's select our font. Okay, I'm going to scale this up. And while it is readable, it's really not the best. So what I'm going to do is I'll keep this here as an example of what not to do. But as a secondary font, I want to find something that is readable in a big block of text like this. So I'm just going to use this block of text, and I'm going to filter through all of my options. And since this is going to be for a podcast or for a show, I care about legibility, which, coming back to this presentation here, sans serif fonts are good for readability. So I'm going to go probably something sans serif. We can check out this font, see what I think, zoom in, and it looks nice. It's pretty readable. I need to select regular or medium. Yeah, regular, because it's a little too light. And not quite, I don't know if that quite works. So it's, again, I'm just going to go through a bunch of the fonts here. There's a couple that I know that I like that I can poke around. So here's this one. This one seems a little bit too round for me since this is a sports show. I kind of want something angular because the angles will match a little bit better with my display font, and it'll give more of a feeling of movement, of energy or excitement. And so that's why I want something that isn't quite, my watch just went off, but that isn't quite flat, that isn't quite regular, but a little more angular and sharp. Now it doesn't have to be quite like geometric, but something a little less standard is how I would explain it. So if we look at this one, this is getting a little closer because it's more blocky. We see this is a different shape in the T, and it's sharper corners and more interesting holes in like the B and the A, and the I has an interesting shape to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter through all of my fonts, and I'll even look on the internet for some more fonts and see if I can find something that I like. Alright, so I've gone through my fonts, and there are two that I really like that I think work for body copy for this show. And it turned out to be League Spartan, which football league, you know, the name kind of plays into like a sports thing, and Lexend. So these are both pretty good looking fonts. I zoom out and I look at it with the name of the show, and I just see if it fits, if it blends in or not. It sounds kind of weird, but sometimes zooming out and looking at the big picture, you can look at the font and just say, yeah, I know this isn't the right one. And so picking between these two, it's honestly super close. So at this point, it's like, all right, I need to pair them close together and do a very close analysis on the shapes of the typography and how they form. Now, interesting thing about this, let me set this to a unified leading so I get a little bit more of a fair comparison. Okay, so like looking at the A and the U, so this U doesn't have this little drop down right here. The E's are very similar. And I'm looking in between these two and comparing the shapes. This is a larger text at the same point size. These are both 24 point font, but this one on the right is larger. So that affects readability, that affects how it appears on my show, and that's good and bad, because on the left I can include more information, but on the right it might be a little more readable. So that's kind of a difference there. Ultimately, I'm going to decide on this one on the right, because looking at the T's, this one has this little curved part at the bottom. This one is just straight. And I think that is going to work just a little better for my show. So that is now my font of choice. So what I can do is I'll come down here, select Lexend, because that was the one. And then what this would be like the role of the player number, because this is my lower third graphic. So it would be like the host name, and then this would be down here. And when I zoom out, I can see it's pretty legible at a reasonable scale and at a reasonable like size that would appear on the screen. So there we go. I have decided both the primary font for something like the name of my show and for headlines and for primary graphics, and then a secondary font for as a supporting role for that. So this is for subtitles and for body copy and for extra more dense blocks of text or other information that I need it to be legible. So this is an overview of how I choose a font. And actually, while we're on this topic, the nice thing about choosing this as the header is, since it's Montserrat, which honestly is one of my favorite fonts, it is so solid. But if I generate filler text, make it white, and I set it to Montserrat, we have to make it regular like this. I mean, it's not very readable on the background with the ball, but if we just do that, it's fairly reasonable. That's still perfectly legible and totally works for a software website. That could work. I'd probably try and pick something a little better. I feel like there are better fonts that I could use for body copy, but this is great for headlines. And then Susan's coaching, we have a choice for the logo. Now, similarly with Susan, since I am kind of on the topic, let's insert some filler text here and pick a font for her, because here's the thing. Body copy for Susan is going to be different than body copy for a sports show. This is going to intentionally be more legible, a little bit more neutral as well, because it's sans serif. Meanwhile, with Susan's coaching, she needs everything she puts out to look trustworthy. And as a supporter to that trustworthy nature, we also want the body copy to be trustworthy. And so the best way to do that is with a serifed font. So we'll pick something like Cormorant. Another one that will be solid, I'm just going to move this into an open space, is Crimson Pro. Both of these work. So Crimson Pro is a little bit more legible. Cormorant is a little bit more, I would say this looks more refined, more fancy, more higher end, less legible, but that also looks more traditional. So for Susan's coaching, this might be a better fit for body copy because it's a nice mix of serif traditionality while also being nicely legible and supporting the idea of like a DIY fun nature to the coaching. And as a second thought of this, that should be at an angle. And I'm getting real technical, but like literally something like that being at an angle makes it feel even more, supports the idea of DIY, of unique, of different. So small little thing there. So there we go. Let's get rid of this and let's hide everything else that is not important to us, because we now have our options. So we have Susan's coaching, which we're going to put center page. We picked the primary font for the word mark to support her logo. We picked the body copy, which would be Crimson Pro, which this should be in regular, which supports the idea of this coaching brand. And then likewise here we have Montserrat, which we can use both for headlines and for body copy. And then we have a primary font used for our show here. We have a font for our body copy, and then that also works for our other graphics, like a lower thirds, just like that. So that's some of the thinking, way shortened and way condensed into what I can reasonably explain. And this is how I kind of work through picking and choosing typefaces, because these are actually all typefaces for my identity projects and for branding. So the next thing to do would be to match the logo with the typeface, which I've done a horrible job of doing in this example, but that's why you can go watch this video to see how I might approach this type of challenge.